Just after their dinner date, Nkechi and Afam decided to head home. When Afam noticed that she was badly stained, her monthly visitor arrived early that month, and Nkechi could not believe what was happening to her. Afam, with his face filled with disgust, asked why she had to be so dirty to the hearing of everyone around and walked away from her, not caring how she would get home in her current state. People were now staring and pointing at her, whispering between themselves as they watched Afam walk away. Nkechi could not withstand the shame, so she ran quickly to the restroom. On her way, she almost bumped into a young woman who was exiting the restroom, but the tension in her made it difficult to even apologize for what she had done. Nkechi arrived the restroom and quickly locked herself up in one of the toilet cubicles, her heart racing as she replayed all that happened with Afam. This was the third time that Afam was embarrassing her in public. The last time was in his friend's birthday dinner when she finished the food that she was served. Afam called her a hungry goat in front of his friends, who all laughed at her mockingly. For years, Nkechi has endured being put down by Afam, and even if she knew that leaving him was the best decision she could ever take, her heart still beats for him, making it difficult for her to leave. How will I survive without him? And who will love me if I ever leave him? These were the unspoken questions that made Nkechi remain in a loveless and abusive relationship with Afam for over 7 years. She stood in the restroom, tears welling up in her eyes as she tried to wipe off the stains on her dress with some tissue. Her entire body was soiled, and Nkechi began to think of what to do with her soiled dress. She saw a scarf in the corner, and just as she was about picking it up, she caught sight of something which seemed to be moving inside the toilet. Nkechi paused for a moment because she could not believe what she was seeing. It was a premature baby, abandoned inside the toilet. Its limbs and arms seemed to still be moving, so Nkechi quickly picked up the baby and ran out of the restroom, not caring about her stained dress. Everyone stared at her, wondering what could have happened. Her dress was badly stained with blood, and she had a premature baby in her hands. People could not help but assume that she was the mother of the child. Some even assumed that she tried to have an abortion and was left with a premature baby, hence why her dress was badly stained with blood. How wicked of her to do such to an innocent child, they said amongst themselves as they looked at her with disgust. Nkechi, at this point, did not mind the stares, as all she was focused on was to save the life of the premature child. She arrived at the hospital and the baby was still alive. The doctors and nurses quickly took charge of the child, doing all they could to keep her stable, and after several hours, they returned and informed Nkechi that the baby was now in a stable condition. However, the doctors needed to know how she came about the baby, and Nkechi narrated the entire story to them. All the doctors were stunned as they never expected the baby to survive. They informed Nkechi that the baby was already 5 months old and might end up with several birth defects. The doctors went on to state that the baby would have to remain in the hospital for some months under close observation, and Nkechi urged the doctors to do whatever it takes to keep the child alive. Nkechi, despite hearing all this, was so delighted to know that she saved the child's life. She returned home that evening and met Afam, who was parked in front of her house, waiting. "Where have you been?" He screamed at her angrily, and Nkechi narrated the whole story to him. She informed him how she found a live baby in the toilet and how she had to rush the baby to the hospital before returning home. "So, you think I am so dumb?" he asked Nkechi, who could not understand the reason for his question. "You had a failed abortion, and you are here lying to me that you found the baby inside the toilet in the restaurant. Do I look like a child to you?" He asked Nkechi, who did all she could to convince Afam that the baby was not hers. But Afam already had his mind made up, accusing Nkechi of being a prostitute who was sleeping around with men whilst claiming to still be a virgin. In that moment, something snapped in Nkechi. She had endured Afam's insult for far too long. But now, after everything she had just gone through, Nkechi was ready to face whatever. I am done, she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. I'm done with you, Afam, she said again, looking Afam in the eyes without flinching. Afam's eyes widened, shocked at her defiance. What did you just say? He asked Nkechi, who repeated herself this time, even louder. I have wasted 7 years of my life, being humiliated, insulted, and treated like I'm nothing. But today, I realized something. Saving that baby made me feel more alive than I've ever felt with you. I won't waste another minute being humiliated and looked down by you. Afam stood there shocked. He was not used to seeing Nkechi stand up for herself and was convinced that she would regret her decision. You can't survive without me, he said to Nkechi, warning her never to come close to him again. Afam got into his car and drove off, convinced that Nkechi would come begging. Nkechi got into her house. She could not believe how relieved she felt to finally summon the courage to end her 7 year relationship with Afam. It was as if she had been in bondage for all these years and was finally free. All she could think about was the baby in the hospital, and Nkechi found herself praying to God to keep the baby alive. In the weeks that followed, Nkechi visited the hospital regularly, checking on the baby. The doctors were all amazed by the baby's strength and resilience. They all thought she would develop some birth defects, but she seemed to be growing just fine. Despite all odds, the little girl was improving day by day. Nkechi, who had never thought of herself as a mother, began to feel a deep sense of connection with the child. She could not explain it, but it was as if fate had brought them together. Eventually, the doctors asked if she would consider adopting the baby, as no one had come forward to claim her. Nkechi had her mind made up to care for the child if no one ever showed up for her. As the days went by, the baby was handed over to Nkechi, who took her home and began to care for her. Afam was home staring down at his phone. He could not believe that weeks had passed and Nkechi never bothered to reach out to him as he anticipated. Afam could not believe that Nkechi was living just fine without him. His ego was bruised, so he decided to pay her a visit to request for all the things he had ever gotten for her. He arrived in Nkechi's home and heard the cry of a baby. Afam was so furious. He barged into her house and requested for all the things he had ever gotten for her. Nkechi looked at him shocked. She could not believe what Afam had come to do in her house. He stood by her door, his eyes burning with anger as he stared right at her, demanding for all that he had ever gotten for her. Nkechi gently walked into her room and came out with a box containing everything that Afam had ever bought for her during their 7 years together. She never expected this from him, but was not shocked considering how he had treated her for all these years. Afam picked up the box and said to her that she would never find a man willing to marry her. The evidence of your promiscuous life is now evident for everyone to see. Let's see the man who will agree to marry you with this bastard child of yours, he said to Nkechi, who showed him the door and told him to leave and never return. Nkechi could not believe that she spent the better days of her life with such an unruly man, a man who had no atom of regard for her or even cared for her well-being. She looked down at her baby and felt so much love in her heart, a love she had never felt before. And Nkechi, in that moment, knew that everything that happened in the restaurant that day led her to this exact moment. As the days went by, Nkechi was home, pacifying her adopted daughter Nina, when she heard a knock on her door. She quickly dropped the baby in her cot, and the baby began to wail at the top of her voice. Nkechi hurriedly rushed to the door to check who it was and was shocked to see her mother standing in front of her door. Mama, is everything okay? You didn't inform me of your visit, she said to her mother, who asked her if it was a crime to visit her own daughter. Mama, I never said it was a crime. I just felt you should have informed me of your visit in case I was not going to be around, she replied her mother, who heard the cry of a baby coming from inside her house. Do you have a visitor? Her mother asked her as she wondered what a baby was doing in her daughter's house. She quickly walked into the house and caught sight of the baby, who was wailing at the top of her voice. Whose child is this? Nkechi's mother asked, her face riddled in confusion as she watched the crying baby wriggle in her crib, wailing for attention. Mama, she is mine. I adopted her a few months ago, Nkechi told her mother, who could not believe her ears. You adopted a baby? A single girl like you? You should be focused on finding a husband. Why was I never consulted before you made this big decision? Her mother asked her, as Nkechi apologized to her mother and said that she never informed her because she knew that she would discourage her from adopting the little child. Nkechi then sat her mother down and narrated the entire story to her. Her mother, after listening to the story, asked her why she had to be the one to adopt the baby when there are so many couples out there willing to adopt a child. She explained how caring for her adopted daughter Nena changed her life and helped her break free from her toxic relationship with her fam. Her mother sat there quietly, absorbing everything that she was saying, her expression softening as the story unfolded. After a long pause, she finally spoke. Nkechi, my daughter, she began, her tone filled with emotion. I have always prayed for your happiness. When I heard how Afam treated you, I worried, but I didn't know how to intervene, seeing how deeply you were in love with him. However, with this child, do you think that you will ever find a husband? She asked Nkechi, who said to her that any man who loves her genuinely will not have a problem if she has a child or not. Nkechi was not bothered at all, knowing the joy that she derived having the baby in her life. She was willing to risk it all for her and didn't even know why. Her mother stood there as she watched Nkechi cuddle the baby in her arms. She was so worried that her only daughter would end up unmarried. No young man in his right sense would marry a woman with a child when there are thousands of women out there without children, she thought to herself as she pondered on what to do about it. One morning, as Nkechi rushed off to buy some items for her baby, she came across a handsome young man who piqued an interest in her. His name was Echezona, and he happened to live close to where she lived. Echezona offered to escort her home, and they both walked and talked for a few minutes till they arrived her house. Nkechi could sense a good vibe with him and decided to inform him of her daughter. She did this to ensure that Echezona knew that she had a child of her own. However, when Echezona heard this, he was put off, and this was obvious from his reaction. He immediately told Nkechi that he had somewhere else to be in 5 minutes and rushed off without even saying goodbye. Nkechi was so hurt by this. She got into her house and met her mother, who overheard everything that happened. You see what you have caused for yourself. No young man in his right senses would want to marry a woman who has a child. You need to decide on what you plan to do with this child before you end up single forever, she said to Nkechi as she walked off to her room angrily. Nkechi stood there sad as everything played back in her head. She knew that it was never gonna be easy finding a single man who would be willing to marry her, but something seemed to reassure her that she was going to be fine. Her mother walked out in that moment and advised her never to tell a man that she had a child. After all, the child is not really yours, she said to Nkechi, who stood there confused. as she pondered on if to follow her mother's advice or not. Nkechi knew the damage withholding such information could cause, but her mother did not lie either, as truly she had never bettered a child before. As the years went by, Nkechi came across several men who piqued an interest in her, but later changed their mind when they saw her daughter Nena, who was now 7 years old. Her mother's prediction was now coming to pass, and as much as Nkechi tried to act as though everything was fine, deep down she knew that she wanted to settle down and have children of her own. Her daughter Nina brought so much joy to her heart, but Nkechi was not getting any younger. She found herself craving the attention and companionship that a loving partner could bring, and yet, every time she allowed herself to love, her heart got broken by men who could not see past the fact that she had a child. It seemed as though her mother's words were haunting her, and Nkechi often wondered if she had made the right decision. One day, Nkechi was returning home with her daughter when a man stopped her and accused her of trying to kidnap his brother's daughter. "That's my brother's daughter right there," the strange man screamed as he yelled out, calling her a kidnapper. Before Nkechi knew what was happening, some angry mobs had surrounded her and began to beat her up. Nena did all she could to explain to the people that Nkechi was her mother, but no one seemed to listen to her. The strange man then called his brother on the phone, saying that he just saw his daughter with a strange woman, and his brother, who was home at the time, quickly rushed to the scene and met with them. He stood there stunned, unable to believe his eyes. He was staring right at a girl who looked exactly like his daughter and wondered how this was possible. He stepped closer, his gaze fixated on Nena. The resemblance was so uncanny, and she looked exactly like his daughter, who was seated in the back of his car at that very moment. How is this possible? He asked himself as Nkechi, who was already bruised and shaken from the attack, walked up to them to grab her daughter. "Stay away from my daughter," she said to the strange man, who apologized to her for what his brother had caused. "I think this is a misunderstanding," he said to Nkechi, who did not seem to find it funny. She was almost lynched by some angry mobs and expected an explanation. The strange man, without saying any word, asked her to please follow him. "I think you need to see this for yourself," he said to Nkechi as he took her to his car and showed her his daughter. Nkechi was speechless as she looked in amazement at the girl, who looked exactly like her daughter Nena. Same face, same features, as though they were mirror images of each other. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Was this some kind of cruel joke? How could two children look so alike, yet belong to different families? They all stood there shocked as the man informed her that his daughter's name was Chiamaka. He then glanced at Nena, then back at Nkechi, and asked how this was possible. Nkechi, still reeling from the shock, pieced together the moment when she found Nena in the restroom all those years ago. She had never stopped to think about the possibility of there being another child. A painful realization hit her in that moment as she began to think, what if the woman who abandoned Nena had no idea she was carrying twins? What if Nena's twin had been left behind and somehow ended up with this family? Nkechi had so many questions on her lips at this point. The man, seeing her expression, asked her where she found her daughter. Nkechi's voice shook as she recounted the story of the day she found Nena abandoned in the restroom of a restaurant. She explained how the baby had been left in the toilet and how she had rushed to save her life. As Nkechi finished recounting her story, the man looked visibly shaken. "Chiamaka's mother never mentioned twins," he said, his voice crackling with disbelief. "She came to my house one night, out of the blue, and handed over our baby to me. She left without saying a word, and I never heard from her again. I never knew she might have left another child behind, he said to Nkechi, whose heart pounded as she wondered what really was happening. We need to figure this out, Nkechi said softly, her voice filled with a mixture of confusion and concern. If Nnenna and Chiamaka are twins, they deserve to know each other, she said to the man, who nodded his head in agreement. The man, still trying to wrap his head around the shocking revelation, suggested for a DNA test to ascertain if truly they were twins. In the days that followed, Nkechi and the man who introduced himself as Chinedu met several times at the hospital, both overwhelmed by the emotional roller coaster that they both found themselves on. The wait for the test results seemed endless, but finally, after days of waiting, the truth was finally revealed. Nnenna and Chiamaka were identical twins, separated at birth. Nkechi felt a rush of emotions as the results sank in. She had raised Nnenna for so long, and now, knowing that she had a twin sister, a part of her feared that she might lose her. But at the same time, she knew how important it was for Nnenna to know her true family and have a connection with her sister. Chinedu too was overwhelmed with emotions. He had thought he was raising his daughter alone, never imagining that she had a twin, living just a few miles away. What they did not know was that the woman who abandoned the baby in the toilet tried to perform an illegal abortion on herself, not knowing that she was carrying twins. She succeeded in removing one baby, not knowing that a second baby was still inside of her. Months passed, and she realized that she was still pregnant when she had a terrifying stomach pain and decided to visit the hospital. There she realized that she was in labor and about to give birth. Once the baby was born, she rushed to the baby's father's house and dropped the baby with him, knowing that she was not ready to mother a child. In the weeks that followed, Nkechi and Chinedu spent more time together, allowing Nnenna and Chiamaka to bond as sisters. The girls, despite the initial shock, began to form a strong connection. They laughed, played, and shared stories, marveling at how fate had brought them together after being apart for so long. As Nkechi and Chinedu watched the twins, they also got to know each other better. Chinedu appreciated Nkechi's selflessness, kindness, and how she had taken Nnenna in without hesitation. He was grateful for her role in saving his daughter's life and caring for her for all these years. One day, Chinedu invited Nkechi to meet his close friend Ugo, who was his fiance's elder brother. He was a very wealthy and influential man who heard about her story and wanted to meet with her. When Nkechi met Ugo, she was initially shy, but they quickly struck up a conversation. Ugo, intrigued by her gentle nature, found himself drawn to her. He admired how she had raised Nena and how she handled the complex situation of reuniting the twins. They began talking more, and over time, a deep bond formed between them. Ugo was different from anyone Nkechi had ever met. He treated her with respect, admiration, and genuine care. Slowly, Nkechi's heart, which had once been broken by Afam, began to heal. She found herself falling in love with Ugo, and he too fell deeply in love with her. Months passed, and Ugo proposed to Nkechi in an intimate and beautiful ceremony, surrounded by their close friends and family, including Nena and Chiamaka, who were now inseparable. Nkechi was overjoyed and said yes, knowing that she had found someone who loved her for who she was. During the engagement party, Nkechi was glowing with happiness, her heart full of love and gratitude for the second chance at happiness she never thought she would have. As she walked around the venue, greeting their guests, her eyes fell on someone she never expected to see. It was Afam, who was sitting in the corner, looking so uncomfortable and out of place. Nkechi was shocked to see him there, but before she could say anything, her fiancé Ugo approached her and introduced Afam to her as his personal assistant. Nkechi's heart skipped a beat as Afam's eyes widened in shock to realize that Nkechi, the woman he believed would never find love, was the same woman who was getting married to his boss. He looked so awkward and out of place, unsettled to see her in such a joyful mood with his boss. Nkechi, however, remained composed. She realized in that moment how far she had come. Afam no longer had any power over her. She was no longer the broken woman he had belittled and humiliated for years. She was strong, now confident, and surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her. Ugo, noticing the tension, asked if something was wrong, and Nkechi smiled and shook her head. No, nothing at all, she replied, her voice calm and reassuring. Afam, clearly uncomfortable, stammered out a quick apology and excused himself. As he walked away, Nkechi watched him go, feeling nothing but relief. She was free of the pain he had caused her, and now she had a future full of love and happiness with Ugo. That night, as Ugo held her close, Nkechi knew she had made the right choices. Life had tested her, but it had also rewarded her with a second chance at happiness. And this time, she wasn't going to let anything or anyone take it away from her. That was how the baby that she rescued from the toilet led her down a path that ultimately transformed her life for the better. Nkechi never imagined that saving an innocent life would one day lead her to find her own happiness, something she never thought possible. The love she shared with Nena and the unexpected arrival of Chiamaka, her twin, gave her a new sense of purpose and joy. Ugo turned out to be everything she had ever dreamed of in a partner: kind, supportive, and deeply in love with her like no one had ever been. Together, they built a beautiful life and home, surrounded by love and everything that they ever dreamed of. The lesson to be learned from this story is that self-worth and courage are essential for personal growth and happiness. Nkechi's journey illustrates the importance of recognizing one's value, standing up against abuse, and being brave enough to leave toxic relationships even when it feels difficult or uncertain. The story also highlights how true love and kindness can come when we least expect it, and that life's challenges can lead us to unexpected blessings. Additionally, it shows that embracing difficult circumstances with an open heart can bring joy, fulfillment, and new beginnings, as seen in Nkechi's relationship with Nena and her eventual happiness with Ugo. Lastly, the story underscores the idea that we must never let others define our future, as Nkechi proved to herself and Afam that she could find love, happiness, and a fulfilling life on her own terms. I hope you enjoyed the story.